Hello, everyone. Welcome to TrueTears. Learn English through real emotional stories. Today's story is about love, heartbreak, and a dress that was never worn until fate brought love back. Let's begin.
My name is Lena Walsh. I'm 26 years old, and I work in a small bakery on the corner of 3rd Street. I come from a poor family. My father left us when I was only 8, and my mother raised me and my little brother alone. I was never rich, never special. But I had one thing that made me smile every day: Eli Carter. Eli was my childhood best friend. We grew up together, playing with sticks and running barefoot through the fields behind our school. He wanted to be a musician, and I always believed in him, even when no one else did. Eli played guitar in a local cafe. I worked in the bakery. We were poor, but we were happy. We were in love. And one evening, right after his performance, he got down on one knee outside my bakery and said, "Lena, I don't have a ring. I don't have money. But I have you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes. I didn't need diamonds. I just said, "Yes, Eli. 100 times yes." That night, we sat by the window of my small apartment. He pulled a silver bread tie from the counter and made it into a fake ring. He slipped it on my finger and whispered, "Someday, I'll give you the real one." We both laughed. That ring, it was cheap, but to me, it felt more beautiful than gold. We decided to get married in 2 months. Nothing fancy, just close friends, simple clothes, and lots of love. But what I didn't know was that life had other plans, and love was about to be tested in a way I never imagined. Part 2: The Rich Woman's Offer. The wedding was only 3 weeks away. I was baking bread at the shop, the way I always did, flour on my apron, a smile on my face. I wasn't rich, but I was happy. Every morning, Eli brought me coffee and kissed my forehead. Every night, we walked home under the same streetlight. But one day, everything changed. A black car stopped outside the bakery. The door opened, and a woman stepped out. She wore red heels, a long black coat, and dark sunglasses, even though it wasn't sunny. She walked into the bakery like she didn't belong there. "Are you Lena Walsh?" she asked. Her voice was sharp, like glass. I looked up and nodded. "Yes, I am." She removed her glasses slowly. "My name is Vivian Carter. I'm Eli's mother." My heart froze. I had never met Eli's mother. He told me she lived abroad, and they didn't talk much. She was rich. She left Eli's father when Eli was young and started a new life in another city. Why was she here now? "He didn't tell you about me, did he?" I shook my head. She smiled. But it wasn't a kind smile. "Listen to me carefully. I don't want my son to marry a bakery girl." I stared at her. My hands were shaking. "I love him," I said quietly. She laughed. "Love doesn't pay the bills, dear. My son is a dreamer. And you'll keep him poor forever." I wanted to scream, but I stayed silent. Then she opened her designer purse and pulled out a white envelope. She slid it across the counter. "Inside this envelope is $100,000. My eyes widened. "Take this money," she continued. "Leave Eli. Don't tell him about this conversation. Just disappear. Cancel the wedding." I felt dizzy. $100,000. That was more than I could ever earn in a lifetime. Why? I asked, my voice shaking. Because Eli deserves a better future. And you'll thank me later. I looked down at my hands. They were dirty with dough. Hers were clean and soft. She turned to leave, but before walking out, she added one last thing. Think about your mother's hospital bills. Think about your brother's college. This money could change your life. And just like that, she left, leaving behind an envelope full of money and a heart full of pain. Part 3. The lie I had to tell. That night, I didn't sleep. The white envelope sat on my kitchen table, like a ghost. I didn't open it, but I could feel the weight of it, not just the money but the choice. I looked around my small apartment. The broken lamp in the corner. The fridge that made that weird sound. My mother's hospital bills stacked in a shoebox. My little brother's college acceptance letter we hadn't replied to because we couldn't afford it. And then I thought of Eli, his crooked smile, his guitar, the way he whispered you and me forever. The fake bread tie ring still shining on my finger. But I also remembered what Vivian said. Love doesn't pay the bills. At 3:17 a.m., I picked up my phone. I wrote the hardest message I ever sent. Eli, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I don't want to marry you. Please don't call me. Goodbye. I hit send. Then, I collapsed on the floor and cried until morning. When the sun rose, I walked to the bakery one last time. I handed my apron to Mr. Dean, the owner, and said, "Thank you for everything, but I'm leaving." I used part of the money to pay my mother's medical bills. I put the rest in a trust for my brother's future. And then I disappeared. I changed my number, moved to a different town, got a small job in a bookstore where no one knew my name. Every night, I held the bread tie ring in my hand and whispered, "Forgive me, Eli." But days turned to weeks, and weeks to months, and I heard nothing. No messages, no letters. No one came looking. Maybe he hated me now. Maybe that's what I deserved. But deep inside, I still ask myself one question. Did I make the right choice? And I didn't have the courage to find the answer. Part 4. The song I was never meant to hear. 6 months had passed. The world had moved on. But my heart hadn't. I now worked at a small bookstore on the corner of 12th and Maple. I lived above it in a quiet one-room apartment. The kind of place where no one asks questions, and you don't give answers. Each day felt the same. Wake up, shelve books, lock up, eat alone. But every Friday evening, a man came to play music in the bookstore cafe. I never saw his face clearly. He always wore a cap low over his eyes. He played gentle guitar songs, the kind that felt like broken memories. I liked him, not because I knew him, but because his music felt like the only thing that still understood me. One Friday night, the cafe was more crowded than usual. I stood behind the bookshelf, peeking through the poetry section, when he said something into the microphone. "This song is for someone who left." Maybe she thought she was protecting me. Maybe she thought I wouldn't understand. But if you're out there, this is what I never got to say. I felt frozen. And then he began to sing. Musical note you said forever, then walked away. Left your name like a shadow that never fades. I searched the sky for your goodbye, but all I found was rain. My heart stopped. I knew that voice. It was Eli. He was here, in this town, in my bookstore, and I had been standing just meters away from him for weeks, hiding. My hands trembled. I dropped a book. He looked up. Our eyes met. He went silent. People clapped, not knowing what just happened. But I stood still, tears in my eyes, 1,000 emotions on my face. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just whispered something I couldn't hear. Then he got up and walked out, just like I once did. Part 5. The letter he left behind. I couldn't sleep that night. Eli had been right there. His voice had wrapped around me like a memory I couldn't forget. And then he vanished again, the same way I had done to him. But something was different this time. The next morning, I came downstairs to the bookstore. Mr. Walker, the owner, looked at me strangely and said, "Someone dropped this off for you late last night. Said it was important." He handed me a small brown envelope. My name was written on the front. Lena. I recognized the handwriting, the sharp loops, the quiet sadness in the strokes. It was Eli's. I froze for a second, afraid to touch it, afraid of the truth inside, afraid of forgiveness I didn't deserve, afraid of love I had buried too deep. But I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. Dear Lena, I saw you, and for a second, I thought I was dreaming. I've played in that bookstore cafe every Friday, hoping maybe, just maybe, the universe would bring you back. But I never thought it would actually happen. You left me, Lena. No goodbye. No explanation. Just silence. It hurt more than I can ever explain. I hated you. I loved you. I missed you. And then I just kept singing because I didn't know what else to do. That song last night, it was never for the crowd. It was always for you. I don't know why you left. I don't know what pain made you believe I wouldn't understand. But I do know this. If I meant even half as much to you as you did to me, you'll come find me. If not, then I'll stop playing on Fridays. And I'll finally let go. Either way, you deserve peace. Even if it's not with me. Love. Eli. I stood there for a long time. The bookstore was quiet. But inside me, a storm had started. I had run from love. From pain. From him. But love didn't run from me. And now? Now I had a choice. Part 6. The answer I had to give. I read Eli's letter 10 times. Every word burned. Every word healed. It was like he had reached into my soul and reminded me that some hearts never stop waiting. And mine? It never stopped beating for him. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the bookstore cafe long after closing, staring at the small stage where he used to sing. His guitar still leaned in the corner, like it was waiting too. And then I made a decision. I couldn't run anymore. The next Friday, the bookstore was quiet. No music played. No Eli. He had kept his word. He had stopped coming. But I wasn't too late. I remembered a small coffee shop he loved. He once told me, when I need to think, I go there. I took a chance. It was raining when I arrived. He was sitting by the window, a black coffee in front of him. No guitar, no music, just silence. He looked up and for a second didn't recognize me. Then he blinked and his whole face changed. Lena, he whispered, like saying my name was the only thing keeping him breathing. I walked toward him, heart pounding like thunder in my chest. I sat down. My voice was shaking, but I spoke. You were right. I left because I was scared. Scared I'd ruin your life. Scared of my past, my pain, my truth. I thought love needed to be perfect to be real. But now I know, real love is the kind that stays, even when everything else breaks. Tears filled his eyes. He didn't speak, just held my hand across the table. And in that moment, there were no more secrets, no more running, just two hearts, finally brave enough to come home. Part 7. The ring that should have never been hidden. The rain had stopped when we left the cafe. Eli held my umbrella, but my heart felt exposed. We didn't say much on the walk back. Some silences don't need to be filled, they feel full on their own. When we reached his apartment, he hesitated at the door. There's something I should probably show you, he said softly. I didn't expect those words, but I nodded. He led me inside. The space was warm, familiar. Books stacked in corners. Guitar chords scribbled on napkins. A photo of us, hidden behind another frame on his shelf. But what shook me was the small velvet box sitting on the piano. He looked at it, then at me. I bought it the night before our wedding, he whispered. You didn't know, but I was going to propose. I had it all planned. My knees almost gave out. Eli. I was going to sing you a song I wrote, right there on the bookstore stage, then give you the ring, ask you to marry me. He opened the box. Inside was a delicate, gold band, simple, elegant, with a tiny sapphire, my birthstone. It was perfect, and it had been waiting all this time. I couldn't throw it away, he said, almost ashamed. So I kept it hidden. Like hope in a box I was too scared to open. Tears ran down my cheeks. I had no idea. He had been ready to love me forever. On the same night, I chose to run away. And suddenly, I realized something. This wasn't just about forgiveness. This was about fate. Part 8. The night before the wedding, again. 2 months had passed. The bookstore was now ours. Yes, ours. Eli had surprised me with the contract on a rainy Tuesday. He'd bought the lease from the old owner, and then quietly added my name next to his. You gave it its soul, he said. It should be yours too. We laughed again. We sang again. We loved again. And slowly, the past stopped hurting. But one morning, he looked nervous. He held my hand with the same gentle grip as always. But this time his voice had a tremble. There's something I'd like to ask you again, he whispered. Properly, this time. I knew. I knew before he dropped to one knee. I knew before the ring. The same ring, still perfect, still filled with quiet hope. Lena, he said, will you marry me? Not out of fear, not because we lost each other once, but because this time we found a love that stayed. My answer? Yes. 100 times yes. And now, it was the night before our wedding. The bookstore was closed early. A little sign on the door read, "Closed for love. Reopen with promises." Inside, the team decorated every corner. Fairy lights, paper stars, books with our names written on tiny bookmarks. Even the coffee mugs wore ribbons. I sat in the quiet after everyone left, holding a letter. This time, I had written it. To Eli. A promise for tomorrow. A vow from a girl who once ran from love and was now running into it. Part 9. The morning of the wedding. Sunlight streamed through the bookstore windows. It smelled like fresh flowers, paper, and something sweet, just like the way love should smell. I stood in front of the mirror wearing a soft white dress, not too fancy, not too loud. Just me. Simple. Real. Mrs. Green, the bakery owner, brought in coffee and muffins. "You did it, sweetheart," she whispered, holding back tears. "You made it back to where your heart belonged." At the altar, which was just the poetry corner under fairy lights, Eli stood waiting. He wore a navy suit and the biggest, most nervous smile I had ever seen. The music played softly. The same song he once wrote for me. The one he never got to sing. Until now. As I walked toward him, time didn't rush. It paused. Like the universe was watching and smiling too. We exchanged vows. "You were the girl who ran," he said, eyes shining. "But you came back stronger." "And you," I smiled, "were the man who waited, not for the perfect moment, but for me to be ready." We kissed. And the room, the tiny bookstore that had seen heartbreak and healing, erupted in applause and joy. Part 10. Happily Ever After begins with books and coffee. Months passed. Our little bookstore turned into a haven for readers and lovers. We added a small coffee bar in the back. Named it Chapter 2. Every week, couples came in asking, "Is it true? Did you two really get married here?" We would smile and nod. Sometimes Eli would pull out his guitar. Sometimes I'd read from my journal. And always, we reminded them, love isn't always perfect. It's messy. It's scary. But the right person will always lead you back home. One evening, I sat by the window, watching the golden light dance over Eli's face as he closed the shop. I whispered to myself, the girl who once ran, now has nowhere else she'd rather be. And just like that, the night before the wedding became the beginning of forever.
This story touched your heart. Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to True Tears, where every story speaks to the soul.